guys, welcome back to Badasses of History. This is part 2 of Hugh Glass. Enjoy. Hugh Glass just boarded a boat with 5 other men intending to go to a Mandan village 300 miles away for a trading expedition. After 6 weeks of battling swift currents and howling winds, the crew found themselves within 1 day's travel of their destination. Glass argued that he could cut the time in half if they went straight through on foot rather than drift around the bend of the river. The others were not convinced to leave the safety of their boats, and Glass parted ways to quench his thirst for vengeance. Within hours, the traders were ambushed by Arikara Indians, and all 5 men were brutally murdered. Except for Hugh, of course. Within hours of his destination, a group of Arikara women spotted Glass and began screaming for their tribe. Hugh took off running, and in another stroke of ridiculous luck, there just so happened to be another tribe who did not like the Arikara and thought it might be funny to steal their kill. 2 Mandan warriors galloped in, swooped up Glass, and brought him safely to the trading post. Just like that, Hugh cheated death yet again. His response to escaping yet another deadly situation? Wait until nightfall and immediately leave. Why? Because people needed to be killed, and nothing was going to stop him. In late November, Glass made a long and cold 38-day trek on foot to Fort Henry to confront his betrayers. He walked up to the gate, rifle in hand. For the past 38 days, he replayed over and over this moment. What he would say, what they would say, how he would kill them. However, when he walked through the gate, he realized there's no one there. The fort was abandoned. Apparently, the men in Fort Henry were under constant attack from the Blackfoot Indians and were forced to relocate. Some accounts say there was a note left on a pillar in the abandoned fort. Others say Glass just guessed the most likely place to build. Either way, Hugh took off again, and within a few weeks arrived at the new Fort Henry on New Year's Eve, 1823. Now, Glass was a sort of celebrity around town. Everyone knew him as the badass trapper that he was, but they also thought he was dead. They crowded all around him to ask questions about the bear, the Indians, the wilderness, all of which he answered calmly, then finally said, "Where's Bridger and Fitzgerald?" His head hung low as he was informed that Fitzgerald was stationed elsewhere, and after a long, hard talk with Bridger, Glass decided to forgive the young man. Fitzgerald, however, had to die. Plus, he still had Hugh's gun, and he really, really loved that gun. Leaving the fort proved tedious, as the winter storms made travel impossible. Overhearing that a group of trappers were planning on taking a trip downriver, Glass eagerly offered his services and accompanied them. Before long, they had boatloads of buffalo furs and were feeling quite accomplished. A small Indian tribe was waiting for them by the water, and the chief beckoned for them to come ashore. They were friendly Pawnee, so the boys decided to leave one with the boat and the others to go greet the chief and enjoy some company. Shortly after they came ashore, Glass overheard an Indian speaking Arikara, not Pawnee, and realized they had been fooled. He informed the other men, and they made a break for the boats immediately after. 2 of the men were instantly shot and killed. Glass and the other split ways and hid in the hills until dark. The man with the boats took off downstream and eventually found his buddy, and the 2 headed to Fort Atkinson, certain that Glass had been killed by the Arikara. Hugh was yet again left alone in the wilderness, without a gun, 300 miles from the nearest fort, and surrounded by bloodthirsty Indians. He did have his knife, though, which is apparently all that he needed. Over the next 2 months, Glass made his way through the rolling countryside, eating buffalo calf and sleeping in open prairies. Finally, in June 1824, he walked into Fort Atkinson and demanded a face-to-face meeting with the man that left him for dead. He wanted everyone to watch as he ripped Fitzgerald's throat out and carved him to pieces. Plus, he really wanted his gun back. Despite his legitimate reasoning for killing a man that was agreed with by all who heard, the United States Army denied Hugh's request to execute a man in front of them. See, as a soldier, Fitzgerald was now the property of the U.S. Army, So unless he was an enemy of the government, Glass had to stand down. They did agree, however, that he should get his gun back, and also felt really bad about the whole thing, so gave him $300 as well. Apparently this was enough for Hugh, because after he received his precious firearm, he let the matter go and decided to head out to Santa Fe with another fur company. Throughout the next few years, Glass joined numerous fur companies, all with little success. He moved from place to place until he met up with the Etzney provost to trap in the Colorado Territory. It was at this time that Glass and a few men saw an Indian woman alone by the river. As they approached with beaver meat as an offering of friendship, she spotted them and let out a blood-curdling scream. This alerted the warriors nearby, who pursued the trappers, killing one and lodging an arrow in Hugh's back. They managed to get away, but unable to remove it, Glass was forced to sit and endure 700 miles with a freaking metal arrow stuck in his back. Once they reached the fort, a fellow trapper, using only a straight razor and some whiskey, removed the arrowhead and bandaged up a now wounded Glass. He spent the next few months recovering and then decided to hit the trail again. Now, unfortunately, the next decade of Hugh's life is not well documented, and a lot of information is considered hearsay and guesswork. We do know, however, that he joined a company at Fort Cass in Yellowstone and was employed as a hunter to supply meat to the fort. In the spring of 1833, Glass and two other well-known trappers were crossing a frozen river to reach a dam in the hopes of trapping some beaver. As they were crossing, they were ambushed by a group of Arikara warriors. Now, the following scenes were described by a single man who stumbled upon Hugh and the other two trappers. There are no other accounts that validate this story, but it is still considered accurate. Without much of a fight, the three trappers were shot repeatedly and scalped, presumably alive. All of their weapons, knives, furs, clothing, and ammunition were taken. Glass had survived impossible odds, only to be scalped and left for dead on a frozen river. I wish I could say that he managed to escape and lived his life as a bald and scarred man traveling the countryside as a lone trapper, but Hugh really did die that day. His burial was recounted in a journal made by the man who found the bodies. It states, "We returned together and buried the three men, amid the most terrible scenes that I had ever witnessed. The crying was truly appalling. The three men were well known and highly esteemed by the Crow Indians. When their bodies were lowered to the last resting place, numberless fingers were voluntarily chopped off and thrown into the graves. Hair and trinkets of every description were also contributed, and the graves were finally filled up." Now, if the finger part is confusing you, let me explain. In some Indian cultures, you would express your grief by cutting off one of your fingers. It was for yourself, but also to show others how deep your pain was. Some women were documented having no fingers at all, as they had been all chopped off from immense grief throughout their lives. This is how well-known, respected, and loved this man was. Not long after, another group of trappers were duped by the Arikara pretending to be a friendly tribe. As they were warming up by the fire, the leader of the trappers, Johnson Gardner, noticed an Indian holding up Hugh's rifle, and some of the others with his knife and other belongings. A fight ensued, and the Arikara were driven out, and two were captured. After an interrogation, Johnson felt the Indians needed to be punished, so he scalped the two Arikara and burned them alive. Such is the way of the wilderness. Days after the encounter, Johnson was captured and given the same horrific death. Kill and be killed. That is the way of the wilderness.